Hi, Connie here. And I've been feeling this pull to speak up. Um, I I think in speaking up, it's a part of the process of taking back what I feel was stolen from me. Um, and so I'm gonna just share from my perspective, what happened and um, how it's affected me. I know it's really helpful to hear other people's stories um, and like how they've gotten through it and things. So back in January, um, I was working with two other women to facilitate a retreat in Mexico. And one of those other women, we went in as equals. We split the deposit three ways. Um, and the agreement was to split any commissions um, equally three ways. And the work leading up to it um, was energetically equal. The space that people were holding and the gifts that they were bringing, to my understanding and what was discussed, it was all equal. um and one of the other women, they wanted to get paid a couple $100 um for creating the website, and it just didn't sit right with me. It felt like by her asking to get paid for that, that it was discrediting any work that I had been putting towards it, which was a lot. Um, and so I spoke my truth and I shared that it doesn't feel right with me, that it discounts what I'm doing by, asking for that. And at the end of the day, um, it couldn't be moved past on her side. And she went behind our back and contacted the person, the contact at the retreat center, and um, told her that she's pushing us both out, and um, that she will be taking over doing the retreat. And that person stood by her in doing that. And this was something that it crushed me. I couldn't sleep. My nervous system got completely dysregulated because I had been pouring my heart and soul into this. And I thought that I had finally found people. These were the first people that I had ever been around that I didn't feel like I had to turn down my light around, that I had to dim or hide who I am. I felt accepted. And in fact, I thought that it was a place where it was encouraged to turn up my lights. And so I'm actually, we were supposed to be leaving this weekend to go to this Mexico and facilitate this retreat, which I feel like is part of why it's coming up again. I have done a lot of shadow work um, from January until like even just yesterday, I had had a dream and I woke up and I was very dysregulated. And so I sat with what had came up in the dream, which was um, she was facilitating a retreat, and I had brought like this very beautiful candle holder, and she shattered it and then tried to like glue it back together. And it wasn't, it was like a half-assed attempt. And and then she just tried to, like, in this dream, talk about another retreat and what she's planning in the next year, and I just couldn't give it my attention. And so I just sat with, like, why is this coming up again? You know, there's feelings of feeling like this opportunity was stolen from me, and with it being this weekend and like me supposed to be packing and preparing to go do this and not being able to, my hope is that in speaking up, that I take back my power, that I take back and I release um, any sort of, you know, like I said, I've been doing a lot of the shadow work with like why this had dysregulated me so much. For about 4 weeks after this happened, I was a wreck. And I slowly have been trying to like put the pieces back together and re-regulate my nervous system. And this is like very intentional work. Um, but I want to share kind of just what the whole story is and how it started. I went to a retreat in Mount Shasta last summer, and it was her and somebody that I knew, who I've had Reiki sessions with and have attended yoga class with, and who I admired and looked up to. And this was their first retreat. Um, and I came in kind of last minute to that retreat, and it was with one other person, and the within the day of me being there, I could feel that there was this disconnect between two of the leaders, one of the other leader that they were working with. And um, through that time, um, I stepped up and I was supporting these leaders in, like, you know, Reiki sessions and card readings and sharing like what I'm picking up on, and um, creating the certificate when the other leader ended up completely throwing her hands up and throwing in the towel and walking away and not even finishing their retreat. And and then towards the like her throwing her hands up and me stepping up, there started to be this like planning of a retreat in Mexico, and it being like the Lumerian mermaids, and um, a women's healing sacral retreat was being birthed, and they had a retreat already on the books for Sedona in November. And so I had agreed to work in supporting that Sedona retreat, um, with the agreement that I would be a full partner in Mexico. And so for 6 months, I was on every single call for planning, for the behind the scenes, I was the first person to get to the Airbnb and start setting up for a retreat. Like I was not recognized as a facilitator, but very much worked very closely in the process of getting that retreat set up. And those two ladies on that retreat ended up having a lot of tension between the two of them. And I, again, was like kind of the peacekeeper in that. I held space for each of them to like process what was going on between them. And so I feel like a lot of what like the Mexico fallout was this container not being completely like closed and Mexico being open, because it was kind of like Mount Shasta led into Sedona, which led into Mexico. And I know that this is all happening for my highest and best. I know that in this, I saw that I am an overgiver and that I am a people pleaser. And so within this experience, I did find sovereignty in my light and in who I am and in my boundaries. And there's so many gifts that have come from that. And when I had sat down before I did the shadow work yesterday with like the full moon energy and everything, I wasn't sure what the lesson of all of this was. But with sitting down and doing the shadow work, I'm seeing that my wounding that I'm working through, that this has helped me to illuminate, is when it's not safe for me to show up because I've never been accepted unconditionally when I shine my light and I show up as my true self. And so I went into like that really deep yesterday and started to kind of work through reprogramming that thought pattern in myself or belief in myself. And it's very hard work, right? To like look at these things, but I don't want to attract an experience like this ever again. It felt so terrible to pour my heart and soul into this for over 6 months just to have somebody push me out. And I could probably take legal action and win, but you have to consider, like, is the energy that goes into that and the financials that go into that, like, even worth it? And I haven't completely decided. We're going to be moving, and so that's like where a lot of my energy is going, like re-regulating my nervous system and making sure that we have somewhere to live. And in the same time, like I know that karma is going to do its job. So I wrote a letter, and I'm just going to end this video in reading this letter. And I'm just going to close this chapter and call it done. And so a part of this is kind of just, I am somebody that when I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And posting and marketing this retreat and not following through, there was a part of me that felt like I let my community down. And so another purpose of this video is to kind of just share the unfiltered, completely transparent version of my truth on what happened. So the letter: to the one who couldn't hold me, I see you now. You once invited me into a space where I felt safe to shine, where I believed we were building something sacred together as equals. And I showed up. I showed up wholeheartedly, open-heartedly, with truth, time, and my devotion. And when I stood in my worth, when I said no to imbalance, you chose ego over integrity. You chose control over collaboration. You chose to protect your power, not our shared purpose. And in doing so, you lost the fullness of what I brought. You may not realize it, but I was a gift in that space. My light did not dim when you walked away. It only became more sovereign. I released the wound of being discarded for standing in my truth. I released the dream of what could have been. I reclaim all the parts of me that felt confused, small, or silenced. You broke something that was beautiful, and then you tried to glue it back together with shallow words. I don't carry resentment anymore, just the wisdom. I no longer sit at tables where I must fight to be an equal, where I fight to be seen. I walk now with those who recognize me as a kin. We are complete. I bless your path, and now I fully return to mine with clarity, peace, and power. It is done.